stay for dinner. Cooking, curiosity, and conversation. If you love cooking, if you hate cooking, if you have no idea how you feel about cooking because you've never tried it before, congratulations, you are in the right place. That place at the moment is my tiny apartment kitchen in Los Angeles, and you are joining me for the climax, the finale of what I've been calling, I think rightly, the biggest event in culinary comedic podcasting, the ingredient draft. Myself and Haley Hepworth, comedian, person I am married to, and also person I am spending the quarantine with, enthusiastic and very, very good home cook in her own right. A few episodes ago, Haley and I each drafted a team of 6 actual ingredients that we have here in our apartment, and then we cooked with them along with some pantry staples. Each of us made a dish with those 6 ingredients, and now we are going to be judging the dishes against each other, and it should be interesting also being the judges in addition to being the competitors. But what are you gonna do? It's quarantine. Sometimes you have to wear a bunch of different hats because you can't have other people in other hats over to your house. To fuel us for this final judgment of the ingredient draft meals, I will be making some red beans and rice, a recipe called Monday Night Red Beans and Rice by Pablo Johnson, who is a New Orleans-based writer and photographer. I am finding this on the Splendid Table website. The Splendid Table, the very venerable food radio show and podcast. I've also found this recipe on the New York Times website. It's kind of all over the place. Basically, it seems like if there's so much is open in your mouth, Pablo Johnson from New Orleans will give you this red beans and rice recipe, but I'm really excited about it because it's pretty simple and it's exactly the kind of thing that sounds great right now, where you just kind of put some stuff in a pot and you let it go for a while and then it's done. I have actually started cooking already, or at least started preparing last night. I actually remembered to soak the beans because it calls for soaking these red beans overnight, and I did it. I remembered. I had some dried red beans that have been hanging out since the beginning of quarantine, and I actually soaked them, so that is very exciting. Other than that, let's do a quick check of my ingredients. I have pretty much all of this stuff, thankfully, but I have a pound of dried red beans, and that is what I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be altering some of the amounts just for myself here, but not in any really kind of formal one-to-one way. So I'm just going to give you the proportions from the Pablo Johnson recipe. We have a pound and a half of dried kidney beans, a pound of smoked sausage or andouille cut into 1/4-inch rounds. Oh, and I should say about the red beans, he makes a note in the recipe that you can use canned beans if you want to save time, but you probably want to cut down on the salt in the rest of the recipe because oftentimes canned products will have some additional salt. So anyway, 1 pound of smoked sausage or andouille. I have about 12 ounces. And then I'm also going to be using, it doesn't call for it, but I'm also going to be throwing in a little bit of salt pork at the beginning. We have some salt pork hanging out. I've used it a few times before. It's really great. It's like bacon, but not exactly. I don't think you would want to eat it on its own. It's a little bit, I don't know the technical difference between it and bacon. I just know that it's a little bit like bacon's less polished cousin, and you mostly use it to like season or flavor things as opposed to it being a thing that you're eating in and of itself. But we have some, it's been hanging out in the fridge, so I'm going to use a couple slices of it at the beginning to kind of give some additional porky flavor. So calls for 6 cloves of garlic, finely minced, 2 medium onions. We're going to be dicing finely a medium bell pepper, 1 rib of celery, several tablespoons of olive or vegetable oil, about 4 tablespoons, 3 bay leaves. Bay leaves are the best. They're really kind of the secret taste weapon of so much stuff, where which was to mash up some of the beans and reincorporate them in a separate pot and then add them back in, or a separate pan and add them back in rather. And I think ultimately I'm not going to do that because when I was trying to scrape some of them off the bottom, they were already kind of broken in that process. So I am, as a plus, getting some of that creamy texture integrated into the rest of the pot. So that's good. I had turned the heat up for a second to kind of deglaze and burn the alcohol off. And now I'm turning it back down. So I'm gonna go ahead and do one of my last steps, which is to add in the chopped parsley and the chopped green onion. I'm gonna let that go for a minute and then just kind of taste for texture and seasoning. So I'm in kind of a bind here. I stirred in my parsley and my onion, and that's supposed to be, you're kind of in your last 15 minutes of cooking at that point. And what ended up happening was, after I stirred those in, I kind of tasted everything and was getting beans that just weren't very cooked the way I was when I was tasting right after everything was kind of getting burned and I was in crisis mode. And so now the onions and the parsley are kind of stirred in there, and if I keep it going much longer, they're going to get kind of soggy and too cooked. But I also don't want the beans to be undercooked, frankly. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do, but it's a dilemma. A dilemma of, do you have parsley and green onion that you've cooked the crap out of in a not very pleasing way? Or do you have undercooked beans? I mean, undercooked beans is really tough. Literally. All right, ultimately I'm opting for letting the onion and parsley get gross in favor of not having undercooked beans. I'm gonna put more water in and keep cooking them. I think I could end up with a really, really soupy texture because some of the beans are already broken. So you're having a combination of almost a refried bean texture and then some beans that are really under. So it's not great. We're not covering ourselves in glory here, unfortunately. But it is what it is. And I'm going to throw the lid on the pot to hopefully keep some of that moisture in there and just get those beans cooked, basically. All right, it's been about 15 minutes. I just took the top off and stirred it around. It definitely has gotten very homogeneous and gloopy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, I don't think, in general. It might not be the platonic red beans and rice ideal. I'm really not sure, but it isn't necessarily unpleasant. I'm just going to try a couple of different beans here from different parts of the pot. Make sure that they're hopefully getting somewhat evenly cooked. Okay, all three of the beans I just had ranged in texture from really soft to ideally soft, where I would like it to be, all the way to still on the somewhat toothsome side, so I'm going to let it go like another 5 minutes. And the other thing I'm going to do, since I've lost a lot of the advantage of sort of going, oh, there's a little bit of fresh stuff in here, stirring the parsley and green onion in at the end, because now they're all part of the gloop. I'm going to chop up a little more parsley and then just sprinkle it over the top, because it never hurt, it only helped. On the plus side, I think my rice turned out decently. That was going to be one more humiliation that I could take if it hadn't. That's a healthy way of thinking about it, right?
Five, 6, 7, 8.
All right, Haley Hepworth, you have in front of you red beans and rice.
Mm-hmm. Looks great.
Let's eat it. Oh, quick eating advisory. There's some bay leaf in there that, all things being equal, I would have fished out.
Gotcha.
But it got kind of broken up and crazy in
Good
the
to
process.
know. I'll keep on the lookout for it.
Sweet, sounds good. So before we get into the judgment, the final chapter of the ingredient draft cook-off, first thoughts on the red beans and rice?
It was good. I enjoyed eating it. It was very very comfort mealy. I was realizing I don't think I've ever had red beans and rice before. Have I?
Have we gotten it like from Popeyes or something as like a side?
Sure.
Or maybe that's dirty rice. I'm not sure. Now I'm questioning myself.
I think it's red beans and rice. Or I think it's advertised as red beans and rice.
Which is really good.
It is good. No, it is good. I guess maybe that's the only application in which I've had it. I think. So I guess, yeah. So in that sense, it was somewhat interesting because I was found myself a little bit trying to figure out like, what are the different things that this is reminding me of? As far as like, it's kind of reminding me of just like a good little like refried bean situation. But then there's a whole different sort of like smoky aspect to it. I don't know. I liked it.
Yeah, I think that is accurate. I don't know if I think I've made it before one other time, but in a pretty different. I don't know what the recipe was, but I think I made it with like a smoked ham hock or something.
Oh,
but
would that have been at the old house?
No, I think it was here.
Huh.
But it might have been some other kind of beans, similar sort of like big pot of beans recipe that's not literally red beans and rice. I'm not sure.
Gotcha. I mean, we've had several. We've had many
things.
A big bowl of beans.
It's a genre. Triple B.
In our days that I really like.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well, ultimately, as some of which I think you maybe heard and smelled. There was a little bit of drama that went on, including the beans. I was like reading at one point, I was like, these beans aren't getting done. And I kept adding liquid. I was reading in the comments, some guy being like, and then you turn the heat up, but really make sure it doesn't burn. And I was like, there's no way mine are going to burn. I keep adding liquid. It's fine. I keep stirring. It's totally fine, whatever. And then we were trying to figure out some, like a laundry situation.
Truly for 2 minutes.
And then all of a sudden you were like, I'm getting like an acrid smell. Is that intentional? Knowing full well that it is not.
That's not true. That's not knowing full well. I didn't know. Because I feel like sometimes, I don't know. I don't know red beans and rice. And sometimes...
I guess Cajun blackened is a
thing.
I'm
thinking like, okay, there's like a blackened
roux
or something. I don't know what all red beans and rice entails if we're looking for that blackened quality. So that...
Fair enough.
I tried to gently call it to your attention.
And you did,
while
gently,
acknowledging that it may be part of the whole equation.
It was really the best case scenario for calling my attention to it. It's just that there was no way that my attention could get called to that I wasn't going to be upset.
Sure.
Because I do really pride myself on like not just like walking away in the middle of a cooking project and like forgetting about it and being like, oh no, and then coming back and it's all burned.
But also, to be fair to you, you were not gone very long. It's not like you walked away and 10 minutes later were like, oh shit, right, I have that thing on the stove.
You were like, I'm doing laundry. Is there anything that's like super high priority for you? So I went to get like a specific pair of socks and then it burned.
And just like that. That's all the time it took.
Which is funny because one of the things that I love about just like a big pot of stuff kind of thing is there's a lot of latitude usually.
Yeah.
But I think in this case I had like turned the heat up. I was continually adding liquid and just trying to get the beans to like get done and they just weren't getting there. And then ultimately, it did exactly what the guy in the comments said. It burned.
And just to clarify officially, I was not passive aggressively being some sort of pill trying to be like, oh, DC, I don't know if you mean to be burning these beans, but it's like, no.
You were twisting a lock of hair around your finger in a kind of like faux naive.
Unbelievable.
One of the things I'm really enjoying about this format is being able to endow people with body language that they in no way have. Because the audience doesn't know the difference. It's part of the fun of the medium. But no, you were very gentle about you were. Again, like I said, best case scenario for breaking that news to me is just that the news was very much not what I wanted to hear.
That also, I definitely maybe got a little bitterness from the meal, but in a way that had I not known that there was a burning issue, I don't think I would have wondered, is it supposed to have this bitterness or is it just a byproduct of like, I don't know.
And I made a conscious choice to kind of I don't know, work it in. Ultimately, I think if we're on Top Chef or in a restaurant or something, it might be like, okay, this pot is done. Or if we're playing the game Overcooked. But I ultimately was like, let me just try to add more liquid and work it in. So I added a little sherry in there. I don't know if that was the right move, but I just wanted to kind of deglaze it up. So I scraped everything to one side and tried to the real burned parts kind of deglaze.
I like the problem solving. Honestly, at this point, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just doing my laundry. But I did have the thought when you went in there and were like, oh shit, yeah, and I could hear you scraping the bottom of the pan. Right. I did think, is there something we can do to deglaze? And it sounds like we're on the same wavelength, DC.
Marriage. Yeah, I felt like I was like, okay, if there's going to be burnt on parts, maybe this is a bad instinct, but I was like, let's just get it in the mix. Let's just get it in the average.
No,
Try
I
to
feel the
average
same
it all
way.
out,
Again, where it's if it were for guests, I don't know if I'd feel the same way. But if it's just for us, give us that little burnt slop.
Yeah.
I love it. I like my toast burnt. I like it.
Yeah. But I think the beans got where they needed to be for the most part. I didn't have too many super toothsome beans. I
didn't have any toothsome beans. I had a couple that maybe were like, oh, this is an intact bean. Yeah. But it wasn't unpleasant.
Gotcha. Ultimately, the goal would have been to have all the beans be more or less intact, except for some that I very purposefully would mush up and add back in.
Interesting.
That did not happen. It got way more refried beansy than I think it's supposed to. And again, I don't have a ton of red beans and rice experience either. I think it is supposed to be, I think what it's aiming for, and I could be wrong, and if Emerald is listening, please, by all means, hit us up in the comments. But I think what it's meant to be is beans are mostly intact. You have a creamy, soupy, liquidy stuff that they're swimming in. Not a ton of it, but it's I think there is supposed to be a liquidiness.
Less of that mash.
But there is a creaminess because you're adding in you're mashing up some of the beans and then swirling them through. So their starch is kind of going throughout to get an additional creaminess, I think, is the goal. And that's what I would have wanted. Ultimately, we ended up in a more refried beansy place. I don't think it was a total loss by any means, and I think
I'd eat it again.
Well, you will be. It makes a lot of food, especially because you're stretching it out with rice. So ultimately, I think not my finest hour, but I'm also not. My head is not fully hung. It's at half. My head is half hung, 3/4 hung, a quarter hung.
Again, this is the part where we get to have fun having all the body language and having people have no idea what's really going on.
I just briefly, completely, head to toe, turned into Charlie Brown.
What was your inspiration for making this meal?
There was a week where we had something. I can't remember what we had. And I was on a group text with my hopefully still current improv team, but who knows what the future is going to look like. I was saying, and then we're going to cook this, or we just got this from the store or whatever, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. And my friend and teammate Carl was like, you should do some Cajun-y New Orleans-y dish. That sounded really good to me.
Nice.
And
thanks, Carl.
Looked it up, and I was like, we don't have bell pepper. And bell pepper is part of the Cajun sort of holy trinity of onion, celery, and bell pepper. They're the Bee Gees of Cajun cooking. And I ultimately was like, okay, shouldn't make it. We don't have bell pepper.
Who's the third Bee Gee?
The Bee Gees are Barry,
Robin,
and not Andy, right?
I only know Barry and Robin because I know the Bee Gees from the Barry Gibb Talk Show on SNL.
But there are three. Because there was...
Not on the Barry Gibb Talk Show. It's Fallon and Timberlake, and that's it.
But there are three Bee Gees, I think. Three canonically. Robin, Barry, and this is where it gets tricky because there was a younger Gibb brother who was solo. And he did did he do jive? He didn't do jive talking, I think. But I think he did Shadow Day. He had his own... He had a little bit of a solo career. But he was never in the Bee Gees, I don't think.
Okay, so he's not a Bee Gee.
No, there is a third Bee Gee. There is a third Bee Gee, and we can't.
Who was not in the Bee Gees?
No. There's a third
You
Bee
just
Gee.
said he was not in the Bee Gees.
No. There was a BG. Okay.
Are you stopping the recorder?
No, I was adjusting our volume. We have on the advice of my attorney, my correctness attorney.
Oh, I meant that my vision of this is that you're turning it on or turning it off because you're like, this is not the podcast I envision.
Oh, where I get revealed to not know as much about the Bee Gees as I think I do. That's exactly
just
what
where
I
the Bee
envision.
Gees are discussed at all.
Oh, I see. No, of course anything I do is going to have room for discussion of the Bee Gees. Turns out I just don't know as much about them as I thought I did. No, what I was saying was there was another. My contention is that there were at least 4 musical Gibb brothers, 3 of whom were in the Bee Gees, one of whom was younger than the other 3 and was not in the Bee Gees but had his own solo career. I think somewhat on the coattails of the Bee Gees themselves, but he was also younger and kind of a heartthrob.
So that's Grace Hepworth.
And I believe exactly. I believe that's right. A lot younger than everybody else.
And a heartthrob.
And heartthrob. 3 Bee Gees. Robin, Barry, right? And those are the ones that are on the Barry Gibb talk show.
Yes.
It is my contention that there is another Gibb in the Bee Gees, and there's also one named Andy Gibb. Andy Gibb is either the youngest one or he's the other one in the Bee Gees.
Gotcha.
And that's all I know.
Okay. Well, there's no way for us to find out.
I know this much is true. Starring Mark Ruffalo and Mark Ruffalo. No, there's not. And I kind of don't want to.
I don't either.
But I do need, okay, good. But have we come here to, without internet assistance, figure out how many Bee Gees and what their names were? Absolutely. We knew that was what we were here to do. But we are also here to decide the winner of the ingredient draft cook-off. 2 episodes ago, we drafted teams of 6 ingredients each, actual things we had in our apartment. And then with the help of some pantry ingredients, we each cooked a meal with them. Then we each ate the meals that we each cooked. Each. And then...
I was a part of this and I'm lost.
2 queens stand before me and 3 Gibbs. 2 episodes ago, we drafted teams of 6 ingredients in a like NFL or NBA style draft. We got to pick from a list of ingredients. We each drafted a team of 6 ingredients. We then cooked a dish with them, each person cooking with their team of ingredients, along with access to pantry staples, let's say. Then we both ate the dishes that we made. We chatted about them a little bit. And tonight we will decide based on our reactions, our memories, our hopes, and our dreams, who won the ingredient draft. We would have had other people judge in a vacuum, but it's quarantine, so we're all wearing a lot of hats and judges' wigs.
I know our friend Kale suggested too late today that we should have taken a plate of each, dropped it on the doorstep of a friend, had them judge, not knowing who made which dish, so they wouldn't be biased.
Judging blind, interesting.
That may have just been Kale's play
to get food,
some dinner.
Sure, which is fair enough.
But we didn't do that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That is a good idea.
Well, when we draft Bee Gees,
we can then each drop.
We drop the song that we make with each of them off on a friend's doorstep.
Here's, I think, a reason I know there's 3 Bee Gees is because I have a Best of Bee Gees anthology on CD, and I think it's broken up by Bee Gee. So it's like Best of Andy, Best of Barry, or not Best of Andy. I don't know if it's Andy or not. Best of Barry, Best of Robin, Best of the other one. And there's more than 2. I remember that much.
Interesting.
The plot thickens. There might even be more. What if there's 4? I think there's 3.
4 Bee Gees plus the heartthrob?
Yeah, I don't think so. Sounds implausible. We also, in addition to not coming up with that really good kale idea that we didn't come up with, we also never fully came up with a rubric for how to judge this between the 2 of us. And I think what we ultimately decided is this is a great opportunity to explore what are we really looking for in food when we eat it? How do you judge it? We're putting the system on trial, basically, is what I'm saying. And then we're going to talk in circles about it. And then I'm just going to go, I win. And then I'm going to turn the recording off.
God, it seems like we should have done this before. It seems like we should have set the rubric before the cook.
Rather than
because I wonder if now that we kind of know how each of our respective cooks went,
we'll each be jockeying for...
Exactly.
We'll be working the refs, i.e. ourselves. I think we got to take that into account, I guess.
Yeah.
And try not to do that.
Yeah, I also think, I don't think either of us is trying to be...
I don't think so either.
About it.
I don't think so either. So... ultimately, just got an alert that everyone in LA is now required to wear face masks. Have we not been? Come on, guys, wear them. No, but I think this is in keeping with the spirit of the enterprise.
Yeah. So do you want to should we make a list basically of different categories or different criteria that we feel like should be weighed into consideration?
I think so.
Great. Oh boy, I thought that was your wedding ring hitting the table.
No, it was a nut from the microphone bag.
Absolutely furious with me. Sending me a signal that you're ready to go to the mat over this.
You have to be at any time. The categories that that immediately jumped to mind, and I don't think we discussed them, and then when we were sort of preliminarily chatting about this earlier today, you brought up a couple of them that I had been thinking of already, so I feel like maybe it makes sense to put them, or at least, put them on the board and then see what we ultimately want to do. But
yeah, what even were they? I was just tossing them off the top of the old noggin.
I think they were use of ingredients.
Mm-hmm. Who's really serving their ingredients, doing right by them?
And execution.
Execution, like technical execution?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What else can we add here? I mean, I would say just boy, this is vague, but no.
What?
I was going to say taste.
Well, no, but I mean...
how does it How does it taste?
Yes. No, I do think that's important. You can't let that go. Taste. How does it taste?
No, how does it taste?
Good.
Does it taste
It's like the most important thing.
Yeah.
Or is it? I don't know. We'll find out.
I think maybe a question to discuss is, which would you eat again? I think another extremely vague one, but I don't know, the experience. I feel like whatever, maybe we figure out what that means or define what that means, but that's definitely something I feel like we discuss a lot. But
how would you define experience, I guess, would be my question.
I know. That's what I'm questioning for myself. I don't know. I guess for me, I don't know, when we think about it with in terms of a dinner party or something, I think about that in terms of I want, and again, God, maybe this just comes back to my own personal laziness in eating, but feeling I want this to be a relaxing and enjoyable experience. I don't want to be serving people something that they're going to have to wrestle with, or that they're going to have to eat in a very specific way or order, that's going to be fussy or that's going to be obnoxious. That's just no, I want to set something down in front of them that they can just enjoy.
Right.
And that is, I feel like that's something that I think about, that it's we've come to, or at least, I think it's fair to say we've both come to think about more over our careers of throwing dinner parties. It's I think a lot of early dinner parties we would throw would be we are in the kitchen absolutely sweating it out while guests are here. And I think it stresses people out. And we didn't realize that, but just realizing that's not pleasant. We're trying to work really hard to make something nice for everyone to enjoy. But what's enjoyable for people? Not hearing dishes clattering to the ground in the kitchen,
Also, what a luxury was it? How good did we have it that we were we can just see our friends any old time, so let them sit out here for a while we go fuss over some pots. Thing we could do with or without them here.
Yes. Anyway, all
and
of
now
this
we don't
to
have
say...
friends, we just have pots. No, but I
think that's something I'm thinking of that are going down the trail of trying to chase whatever this element is that I'm trying to narrow down, that ultimately is maybe doesn't super apply to this eating experience because it's a single dish. It's not, it's a single dish. It's just the two of us. It's not really presentational or a whole, it's not the same thing.
Well, but I'm sure you thought about it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So did I.
Yeah.
So I think it's on the table.
Great. I don't know how to.
I don't know about
I don't know how to judge it.
Presentation. Is presentation better than experience? I don't know.
Maybe.
Or is that too
things
narrow?
that I even take into that or into the account, not with this specific meal necessarily, because I don't remember it being an issue with this meal, but things that I think about in general with this is even just like, are we eating at a reasonable time?
Right.
You know, like, does it look nice? Sure. But also like, were we planning to eat at 8 and actually we're eating at 11? That I think can greatly affect the experience of the meal.
Thank you for changing the time so that nobody knew that today I said we might be eating at 5 and then we ended up eating at 8. Changing the times to protect the...
Which again, 8 is a totally reasonable time to eat. You know.
Also, you were being updated throughout the process.
Yeah, this is not a read of today's experience.
We kept saying just another half an hour to keep you calm, a la
and I was fine.
Matt Damon on 30 Rock. I think where we would get into trouble is if we had experience and presentation.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would know what experience meant at that point. It's not to say that it's all that presentation is all encompassing of experience, because it's not.
No.
But like plating,
it speaks to some of that thought.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know.
I'm fine with that.
So wait.
I think presentation is a better way to put it, and maybe a better way to mentally frame it.
But experience is interesting and important because there is
but
more to presentation
to quantify.
than I know, but it's...
I mean, we haven't even
out?
started debating these points. We're debating which points get to be points.
I know. Wow. Yeah, totally. And meanwhile, the hours of quarantine are ticking by and we're doing God's work.
We've got laundry in, DC. Come on.
How is the dinner burning again? Oh my God. While we're talking about this.
Is it? I didn't want to say.
The finger
anything.
is curling the hair again. It's not. Should we do, how about this? Presentation / experience.
Great.
The other one I was thinking of, I just remembered, was creativity or degree of difficulty or like ambition.
Sure.
So creativity / ambition / degree of difficulty.
Yeah.
/ the guitarist. So stupid. Somebody else.
Now my wedding ring's on the table.
So use of ingredients, execution, taste / flavor, experience / presentation, creativity, ambition, degree of difficulty, all being sort of in the same, not exactly the same, but kind of in the same category. And then which would you eat again? Does that all sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 6 categories. And I'm wondering if we should basically go one by one and decide whose was more that, who wins, who takes the trick, basically.
Sure.
The only problem there is...
there's a potential for a tie. I think if we get there, if there's not another category or parameter that's jumping to the front of our mind right now, let's not force it. Let's see if we need a tiebreaker.
Okay, cool. Great. Sounds good.
Or if somebody sweeps.
You just handed a bunch of money to yourself, an envelope full of cash with bribe written on it. Okay, first up, just because I wrote it down, use of ingredients. Now, to refresh, to reset, Team DC was scallions, ginger, broccolini, flank steak, jasmine rice, and orange, the fruit. And I made orange beef, kind of in a kind of Chinese American style. Team Haley was eggs, garlic, parsley, hot Italian sausage, collard greens, and a yellow onion. And you made what I would describe as a like savory sausage and greens Dutch baby.
Yeah.
/ Yorkshire pudding.
Yeah, I'm still uncertain on what makes those different from each other.
And again, Emerald, if you're listening, you probably also know that. It's not Cajun, but like, I just want to talk to you, Emerald. What's going on? So first up, use of ingredients.
I would say, just off the top of my head, I feel like your use of ingredients was stronger than mine. Because I think every single one of your 6 ingredients was used very thoughtfully and elevated in the dish as a whole. Whereas, if I'm being honest, I think for myself, I didn't use the parsley as well as I maybe could have, or I don't know. I just feel like I wasn't as thoughtful with the parsley as I maybe would have liked to be.
I understand, and I remember On the episode, you would express that if you had to do it to do over again, you maybe would choose lemon instead of parsley. But I would say you have to take into account almost like, okay, you can use all the ingredients and you can use them well, but did you go above and beyond with any of them? Or like, whoa, was there like a wow factor to your or my use of ingredients? And one thing I think you did have was the use of the eggs. I thought was very, very well, you used the shit out of it, so to speak, I think, in a very unexpected way.
I guess another thing that I think about when I think about use of ingredients is this the best dish that you can imagine creating with this lineup of ingredients? Right. And I think, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think there's part of me that from the beginning has kind of suspected like my ingredients may have been more ideally executed as a pasta dish, just because I think that's how they're more traditionally used. So I don't know.
Yeah, but I think part of me says like, is it cooler? Is it using the ingredients better to use them in an unexpected way or creative way, as opposed to using them in a more expected way? Where I even said, and it was the thing that kind of, or part of what caused you to not ultimately do a pasta, is I was like, oh, you got the eggs because you're going to do a pasta in the initial draft episode and conversation. So I don't know. I know what you mean. Like I do think like, oh, I appreciated how I used all of those ingredients, and they were all, I think, like an equally large part of the dish. So I appreciate that. And I do agree, like the parsley on yours I thought was good and was additive. It wasn't nothing. But there was definitely, I think because I was at least, and I think you agreed, feeling a little bit of a lack of like just a little bit of zing in the greens, and you didn't want to use vinegar because you didn't want it to get soggy. I do feel as though it was almost like the parsley wasn't doing as much as another ingredient might have in that
to bring
slot.
That bright, fresh pop at the end. Yeah.
So for that reason, I would say
to like cut through the fat.
Maybe I would take use of ingredients.
Yeah, I would give it to you.
So the score is 1-0. Moving into the second tranche, the second category. Execution. I would open by saying the two big flaws that I remember in my dish. The biggest flaw that I remember sticking out in my dish, and you tell me if you had a different experience, was the oiliness. There was a lot of residual oil.
Sure, yeah.
I did some bad math. I kind of, was supposed to, I think, dump some of the oil out of the wok at some point, or I didn't, or I added too much to begin with, or I was trying to brown off the meat at the beginning, and there was like, I just ultimately didn't need as much oil as I had in there, and then there was too much left behind, and then some got added back in. The bottom line was, it did eat oily, and that caused some sauce separation, which I really didn't like. So I felt like for that and for my beef not being, I didn't get as good of a cook on the beef as I would have liked. I really wanted that really brown kind of, there's a like, not exactly crispy, but there's just this quality to beef in that dish when you have it and it's really good. That's that chew and that, but it's not
like
overcooked. Caramelized, exactly. I didn't think I necessarily achieved that. I thought it had some good, the beef was fine. It wasn't tough. And I do think I was struggling a little bit against the fact that it was initially frozen. The quality of it wasn't stupendous, but I would at least knock like 1.5 points off of my execution for those reasons, is my own self-assessment.
As far as technical execution, I don't know. Again, I don't think my dish was like perfectly executed by any means, but I am struggling to think of something that I felt like, oh shit, this is not cooked the way that I anticipated or that I wanted. I feel like the individual elements, I was happy with how with the cook on all of them, I guess. It more, I think, was my technical issue. I don't know if it's in technical execution or if it's more in like a choice in the conception of the preparation just to not have more acid in there from like a vinegar standpoint or something. So I don't know if that falls in this category.
I think it could, but it's almost like everything you tried to do, you did well, if that makes any sense. Everything that was attempted, and you attempted a lot, like you made a like savory, fluffy pastry that you then added this filling to, and all of the filling. The filling had a lot of different like layers to it and different components that were brought together very well. And then I think the really genius thing that I thought you did was at the last minute added in a kind of like lightly whipped sour cream that kind of really brought everything together and added this creaminess and brought the filling together, just sort of married the whole thing together, all of which was very, very well done. The Dutch baby was very well cooked. It had a really nice brown on it, really nice rise. It was big and impressive when it came to the table, although that's also a experience/presentation thing.
Yes, I guess when I think about technical, I think about the cook on things as far as like, okay, if the Dutch baby didn't rise, that would be a technical ding.
Right.
If the cook on the sausage was like not there, or if it was like raw in the middle or not browned to the degree that I wanted it to, or over browned or whatever, like those would be things that I would consider like, this is a technical issue, I guess. I feel like I was happy with the seasoning on everything, happy with the cook on the greens. So in that sense, I don't know. I don't know if it's being overly reductive to evaluate it just from like, well, how was the cook on everything and how was the seasoning on everything? But I guess that's what I think about when I think about technical. Yeah.
I would say, because I think the acidity will definitely be counted or talked about in taste, but even if you somewhat include it here or say that it is overlap with execution and is also being brought under this umbrella, I still think yours was better executed than mine overall. You know what I mean?
I would accept that.
So for that reason, I would say you are taking execution. So 1-1 moving into the third tranche. I don't really know what that means, but I like it.
Yeah, I was going to ask. You're really all in on it.
Tranche?
I don't know.
I think they use it in The Big Short when they're talking about like something to do with those loans.
This is not looking good. This is not looking good at all.
Those loans, and Kendall from Succession, before we knew he was Kendall from Succession, is there. So, taste or flavor.
It's hard because I think this one also comes down to like, what do you respond to or what just suits your personal taste? But for me, I would say that yours tasted better to me.
Interesting.
I liked the flavors. I liked the taste.
Interesting.
But I'm never not going to love, that type of dish.
This one might be a weird gift of the Magi thing then, because I really like orange beef. I really like Chinese food. And I liked how my dish tasted. I ultimately thought it tasted good. And I feel like I can remember, okay, this is pretty much how it tasted. And I remember liking it. But I think yours tasted better to me.
Is this just because something tastes better when somebody else has made it?
Probably. There's a non-zero chance of that. But I do really, I just like that like flavor profile. I like yours had a real like Italian thing going on with the sausage and the garlic. And then as we discussed on the show.
Because I feel like that played into how I picked ingredients. Partially was knowing that like, oh, you are going to be amped to eat this sausage.
Oh, interesting. I did it. I didn't know that. Well, now I hate it. No, I love it. Thank you. That's very sweet. I was amped about it. And I do think I figured you would be amped to be eating like orange beef. You know what I mean?
Super amped.
So I think we're experiencing a little bit of, we're reaping the whirlwind of our own choices to try to, I don't know, win, make each other happy, both. God forbid. It's got to be one or the other. So
I don't know. This one is also really hard to talk about or hard to evaluate. I find myself thinking about it and weirdly lumping it in with the like, which would you eat again? Like, I don't know how to really talk about it other than like that.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Because I think if I had to choose, I would choose yours.
To like eat again?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would choose yours.
So is this just a wash?
Maybe.
Shit. Okay. But does that also do we lump it in with which would you eat again as well?
I mean, it sounds like we are.
Okay, great. So those are both a wash. Oh boy. We are running out of road on figuring this out. Okay, we have 2 tranches left. We're halfway through the tranches.
I have to say I'm thrilled by just the efficiency of that though.
Of being halfway through?
Oh, just of knocking those out.
So fast, great. Yeah. Absolutely. Me too. Experience/presentation. I will go ahead first and self-assess. I was not thrilled with the presentation part of that. And maybe part of this is just the experience of me having made it. I remember spooning up the dish or like with my spatula, getting it out of the wok and being like, it's all oily and kind of, I had grand visions of exactly where I was going to put the rice in the bowl and exactly where I was going to put the meat. And because I was miserable when I was doing it, not miserable, but I was a little bit bummed about the oiliness at that point because everything else had gone pretty well. And it's almost like it's the worst to kind of have a moment like that towards the end of making something because there's only so many more decisions you get to make. There's only so many more points where you get to affect the outcome. That I think maybe I'm bringing some of that, but I feel like the presentation on mine wasn't great.
Miserable.
Not miserable, but I was a little bit like, oh man, because it was like, it had been going really well and I was excited about it. And then at that moment, I know what you mean.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the presentation of yours when it hit the table was nice. It had the nice, all the fresh green sort of herbs on top. I don't know. I guess I just don't know how else you would have prepared it or how else you would have presented it, right. I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I guess that also speaks to like, if you choose a dish that's not going to ultimately have great presentation.
Sure.
That can be it. That's you doesn't mean you had great presentation. It just means you didn't give yourself the opportunity to have something that could potentially have great presentation.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair, I guess, because that is something I thought about.
Right.
Or that's something I feel like I was pleased with the presentation of mine.
Right.
Just the adrenaline of being like, all right, you got to go, because with the Dutch baby, it's like you have to eat it immediately or it deflates.
Yeah.
So something in that moment of kind of the excitement of bringing it to the table and the cast iron, which I know you always love, that felt like where I was like, all right, I'm excited for you to see this because I think you're going to be excited by the surprise of it.
Mission accomplished. I think if you go back and listen to me seeing it for the first time, I think my exact words are, and it's in the cast iron or something like that.
Again, God, maybe I'm just playing to my audience.
When the wedding photographer made me turn around and then see the Dutch baby for the first time in all of its glory. Well, I think you were playing to your audience, but that's part of it, Yeah. That's
for
part
sure.
of it.
And that is part of why I chose the Dutch baby to begin with, is because I was, just thinking about like, oh, it's theatrical. It's visual. There's part of it that's a little exciting, that's a little time sensitive, that's in the cast iron, that's,
which
it just
goes
has
into
that electricity, that wow factor. It has that. It's a star. It's a star.
That's why this is a category, though. You know what I mean? Because that all goes into the experience of eating something. There's scientific whatever on like, it does literally affect how good something tastes to you and how much you enjoy it if it looks good, as you can testify to in the opposite when you were already not liking a Big Mac that we got on the road trip, and then you started taking it apart and reassembling it, and then you got to come, which was your first mistake. Then you came face to face with the interior of a Quartzsite, Arizona roadside Big Mac, and that was not helping matters in the slightest.
That was rough.
But you know what moment. I mean?
Yes.
It made it taste worse. Then you really couldn't eat it at that point.
Yeah, it's
true. What I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true. I will say, though, I guess a small ding is I feel like when mine hit the table in the cast iron, wow, I'm happy with it.
Absolutely.
But then in order to actually dish it and eat it, I had to cut it in half, which is kind of like, well, there's no great way to serve it cut in half on a plate. It's not, the appeal doesn't carry over to the actual...
But I think it did. And I think like if that was ordered in a restaurant and it was to be like shared among friends,
sure,
there would be that moment. And then somebody would be like, okay, somebody's going to cut it up, or the server's going to cut it up or whatever.
Yeah, somebody's got to crack the creme brulee or whatever.
Exactly. And then you dish it out and it's really good. And then you're eating it. You know what I mean? And that goodwill carried over. And in our case, because it was like, okay, this is for two people, getting to have half of something is really exciting. And that's a lot of food. And I was excited, and then it's carried over.
Now, here's something just to throw a wrench in everything.
Sure.
Because I'm thinking about something right now that was very much a factor to my experience of eating these meals. I think something that I did not take into account was how hot it was. And I think having the dish that I made on a like sweltering evening was not optimal. I feel like it would be better to me. I think I would better enjoy that dish or a dish like that on like a cold winter's evening or a rainy, just something that feels a little heartier and a little,
I do. But also that was not, I don't know how much that counts. That might only go so far because that was not my experience.
Interesting.
It was hot in here that day. You had mentioned that when we were eating it, like, oh, maybe it would have been better when it wasn't so hot, whatever. But since I hadn't been cooking and it was nighttime and we like had the windows open and stuff, it wasn't crazy hot for me anymore. So I was really excited about it. And that was not part of my experience. I also will admit to having maybe slightly less, maybe just because I was raised in Arizona and it's really hot. Like I don't have, I shouldn't eat such and such on a really hot day in my head as much as other people seem to. I do experience it sometimes and I go like, oh, this is really nice because it's so cold out and I'm loving this warm soup or something.
Right. That's why you have cocoa all year round.
What do you mean?
You're sipping on a hot cup of cocoa with a big marshmallow in it. Middle of July.
Yeah. And those sleigh bells.
Ding, 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 ding.
I guess I'm just picturing myself like if I was sitting on a balcony with friends and it's like a summer evening or even a summer afternoon and it's warm out and we've ordered that and it gets brought to the table and divided up and I'm eating it. I don't think I'm going like, ugh, I wish I wasn't eating this. It's too hot outside.
Oh,
because
yeah, no, of course not.
It also didn't eat heavy really at all. You know what I mean? Like, I think there was like elements or flavors that could potentially go heavy if that had all been in like a soup or something.
Sure.
Or a different kind of application of this, or the greens had been really soupy and heavy or whatever. But again, soupy, heavy greens, when I think of like collard greens in their sort of like platonic form as like greens, like braised greens, that's from the South and it's where it's always hot. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily think that none of those things can be eaten hot when it's really hot outside. And I think particularly in this presentation where it was like, there was the collard greens that were not soggy or soupy. There was the sausage that was cut up into very like manageable bite-sized chunks and is kind of like hot and not like overly logy, something.
Trunch.
It was very trunch. I'll say that much. I just didn't think it ate that heavy. Ultimately.
Good. And I ultimately didn't think it ate heavy. No. I didn't think the pastry was heavy. I didn't think any of it was heavy.
Right.
I guess I don't know. I thought of it more as a like ideal cold weather dish. Just maybe because it's part of it we're skewing, like for you're saying it's skewing pizza. I feel like the Yorkshire pudding out of it all skews like British, where I think you're like in a little den eating your little stuff. And it's
but it didn't have like
outside.
Gravy on it and stuff. And it wasn't a big uncut sausage, you know?
Yeah.
To me, it's like,
I think my sausage. Yeah.
I think my pizza analogy, even though it wasn't perfect, I think to me was closer of what my experience. Oh, absolutely. I would say for me, top to tail, I don't think I was going for as much in terms of presentation or experience as you, and I don't think I got as much.
That's fair. I'd say yours was definitely visually appealing to me and pleasant, but yeah, that it wasn't as just as much of your equation as far as like what you were going for with that moment or with that,
But also it's like at the end of the day, if you don't swing for the fences, you might not get to the fences.
Tell me about it.
And I think that was
again, that's part of why I did this instead of a pasta or something.
And that was a risk I think I knew I was taking, as I was like, okay, I think you're probably going to be doing something really creative because you kind of have to, because you have some stuff that feels a little bit all over the board, or at least some outliers that it feels like. And I could see your picking process. I thought like, okay, you don't, and admitted as much, have as much of a cohesive plan going in.
No.
So I figured, okay, she's probably going to try to do something really creative. So what if I just try to do something that's really flavorful and technical? Is that playing it safe? Is that just hoping that you'll try something and then it won't achieve that ambition? I don't know. Maybe I was, I don't know.
You got to know me better than that, DC.
You put your wedding ring back on, but took mine and put it on. You're married to yourself. So I would easily just on the strength of, as soon as that cast iron hit the table, I feel like you won this category for me.
Fair. I would give it to myself just because I think it sounds like put more thought into that element of it, and I think deliver a higher degree of difficulty in that category potentially.
So moving into the next category. This feels like somewhat of a foregone conclusion based on the discussion we just had. But I need to win this category to tie it up, because if you win, that's the ball game.
Oh.
Because there's only 4 tranches left after we decided that the taste and which would you eat again tranches.
Right.
We put those in the tranche bin. So yeah, I mean, creativity, ambition, degree of difficulty. It feels like, I don't think that mine was like a walk in the park, but
no, you had a lot of different stuff going on.
By my own admission, I don't think mine was as ambitious as yours.
God, what is, how do you even gauge that sort of thing though? Because I think about like, oh, you made a really complex sauce. I don't think any of the elements in my dish were as complex as that sauce. That to me, I would think like, oh, that's Fair
enough. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I do think it was like there were a lot of little fiddly things in my dish that I do think I did well, or like building that sauce, I think was like a decent amount of work, and I was adjusting and I was doing all those different things. But that to me feels more like execution.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I did a good job with that, but it wasn't as creative really. It was like, okay, this is it's not a simple recipe necessarily, or recipes that I was kind of combining. And it wasn't and I experienced it, and it was really, that was part of the reason I was so bummed when at the very end I was like, oh, it's too oily, because there had been so many steps and layers. And so I think like weirdly in a like baroqueness or just like depth level, I think I was going for something that was kind of deep, and that speaks to ambition. I don't think I had no ambition, but by the
ambition
same
and creativity
token,
are different.
That's true.
Yeah. Because, I think you had ambition, but I guess that ambition wasn't maybe directed it wasn't directed towards creativity, I guess. Right. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, okay. It does. It's well, but I mean, that can be anything. It's like you can have somebody whose goal is to just write like the perfect thriller, where it's like, this is going to be a very Hitchcockian thing. It's going to be super almost paint by numbers in a way. But what I'm bringing to the table is execution, and just you're not going to see any of the turns coming, and it's going to be so smartly executed, where you might have somebody else that's going like, I'm going to create a type of movie that nobody's ever seen before. Right. Those are both ambitious, but they're different types of ambition. Yeah. I guess I think I was going for more the Hitchcockian thriller.
And I was going for that crazy movie nobody knows about.
Rosemary's Dutch Baby. So I guess I wish we would have ordered them in a different way, knowing what I know now, because it feels like such a foregone conclusion to be like, we just spent the other 3 talking about how creative and ambitious and high degree of difficulty
I like how they're ordered. I think it's right, and I just think it makes sense.
So I mean, I just don't see any other. I don't see any reason to beat around the bush here. I think you take this category, and I think you win the first ingredient draft cook-off.
Wow. I honestly have to say I did not know that it would go this way, because I feel like both meals had their strengths and their weaknesses, and I enjoyed eating both of them very much. And truly, I enjoyed eating yours more.
Thank you. I genuinely feel the same way. I more enjoyed eating yours. I would love to hear from some behavioral scientists if the only reason we feel that way is because the other person made theirs. But I also think there was a certain amount of like working the refs going on. And we were both thinking about, what is the other person like? We haven't had Chinese takeout in a really long time. It's something you really like. So I want to make something in that style. And you went in basically going like, this dude is going to love this sausage. He can't shut up about how much he would have liked to have it. He's excited to eat it. And I was excited to eat it. And I was also excited to eat garlic again because I missed it in my own dish. So I think part of that is just a function of the format. And you know, it's also like we're figuring that format out. Would we do it differently next time as competitors? Maybe.
I mean, we definitely drop them off for Kale next time.
Oh, 100%.
Or maybe, I mean, for the execution of the Dutch baby and that wow factor, we might have to have him waiting outside. And we can take him out a doggy bag to go.
Yes. Run it out to him on a line. He's standing 6 feet away. That's not a magic bullet, by the way. People, be smart. But
you're worried that people are going to hear that and be like, wait a minute.
I should just do that. Oh, just having it. You mean literally somebody having it on a line? Like they're just like, wait, having it on an old fashioned like laundry line?
Pulley line? What did you mean?
Just in general, that people are like, don't worry, we were 6 feet apart. It's like, yeah, but
I thought you meant pulley line. That people were going to be like, pulley line, light bulb.
Rube Goldberg 2020. All right, that is it. That is all for this week's episode of Stay for Dinner. Congratulations to Haley Hepworth, winner of the inaugural ingredient draft. We had a blast doing this. I hope you've enjoyed listening to it. And it was, honestly, it was a very fun way to just make cooking fun for ourselves right now in a time when it's not always. So if it sounds fun to you, draft some ingredients with your roommates and with your loved ones and learn from my experience. Swing for the fences. Don't just try to get on base. I'm at DC Pierson on Twitter. I'm at DEECEE Pierson on Instagram. And if you want to follow my vanquisher, Haley Hepworth, she is at Haley Hepworth everywhere that matters. My interstitial music is by Advance Bass, the amazing Owen Ashworth. The intro song is July 4th, 2004 by Jason Anderson. And the cover art is by Sarah Beacon. That's Becan. I've written a couple of novels, The Boy Who Couldn't Sleep and Never Had To, and Crap Kingdom. So support your local bookstore in whatever form they exist in right now. And if you like hearing me talk, I read the audiobook versions that you can get on Audible or wherever else you download fine audiobooks. Also, I think you can get audiobooks for free right now from your library. A lot of libraries are doing that right now. So do it. Why not? I read it. You support your local library. Support everybody. That's all for now. Have a great week and see you next time.